A very warm welcome to you from Equa Marketing. This presentation is brought to you by Equa.com, a leader in digital marketing.
Hello everyone, welcome to another amazing episode of Growing Dentist, and I'm so glad I have Dr. David Maloley with me. His story in itself is what's inspirational and the lessons he learned. So I'm really looking forward to having an amazing time today. Dr. Maloley, welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm honored to be with you today.
Thank you, Doctor. Why don't we start by, kind of introducing you to our listeners. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm at heart a Nebraska farm kid. I grew up in a town of about 7,000 people, a little town called Lexington, Nebraska. Grew up around a family. My grandparents were Lebanese immigrants that started a farm there. My dad had 11 siblings, and so all I knew was kind of the hard work and the 24/7 work ethic that went into raising cattle and keeping the crops watered and harvested and all that goes into that. And so I didn't really know any different. My aunts were like second mothers to me. My uncles were like second fathers to me. My cousins were my mentors and my babysitters. And so that was where I started. From there, pretty typical going through high school and undergrad. And you and I talked about offline the book Stephen Covey. I was kind of I didn't put much effort into my education, to be honest, in high school or undergrad for the first couple years. And if you looked at my transcript, you would see the results of that. But that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, quite frankly, I don't even know why I read it because I wasn't a reader, but it was given to me as a gift by my mother. And the whole thought of understanding what's the end of your days, how you desire them to look, and then reverse engineering that made me realize that I was on the wrong path and that I needed to do a pretty significant pivot to get on the path that I would be proud of at the end of my days. So that, as Covey talks about, what would a family member, what would a friend, what would a colleague say about you at your memorial service or funeral? So that transformed my life forever. And shortly after that, I was in athletic medicine at the time. And shortly after that, I decided that taping ankles and rehabbing knees wasn't my future. Those guys, it seems like a glorious job when they run onto the field when there's an injured football player, but to do that, a lot of times it means a lot of travel and not much time with your family, and I recognized that early. And so a dear friend of mine talked me into going to dental school in about a 1-hour meeting, and that's what led me into dentistry. So from there, I went to dental school at the University of Nebraska on a health profession scholarship with the U.S. Army, served as an Army dental officer for 5 years. Had the blessing of being stationed in Germany and Italy, which again kind of transformed my life forever. And then I was an associate in North Carolina for 2 years, and then I started my scratch start practice in 2009 in Avon, Colorado. We can get into that a little bit more because the lessons that I talked to you about before were kind of in the school of hard knocks in that startup. But here's where we live. I live in Vail, Colorado. I believe wholeheartedly in lifestyle design, and I think that's something I've taken from great mentors like Tim Ferriss and Stephen Covey, who we talked about before. And so my epic life is that I get to, in a few hours, pick my son up from first grade, take him up to the mountain and ski with him for a few hours. And we've done that 40-some times this season. So that's kind of my 42 years in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Actually, I'm also 41. I'll be turning 42 this year, so that's interesting. And I love that statement that Stephen Covey made, which is start with the end in mind.
Oh boy!
And he talks about that in the context of life, like you said. What are people going to say on your deathbed? I mean, actually, after you're dead, and then even everything you do, right? Everything,
sure.
Every day, every project, every idea, start with an intention as to what you want, and then go backwards. And the clarity you get in understanding that in clearly allows you to be, very focused. And, a lot of people say, I don't have time. It's because they have never really thought about what's important to them. And, And if you know what's important, you'll have a ton of time.
I talk to a lot of frustrated dentists, and I think as a profession, we can frustration is a common stereotype, I think. But I think a lot of that comes from exactly what you said, is that we don't have what we want, but we don't know what we want. And so to clarify that and make sure that we're headed in that direction, it may not be immediate, and that's fine. But as long as we're headed in that direction and feel like some sort of growth or ascension, I think a lot of fulfillment comes from that process.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's kind of, I want to kind of, 2020 is awesome, and I'm sure you didn't, get to your insights and your thoughts, overnight. Probably like most of us, you kind of had to think about it, struggle with it, maybe even fall down a few times and then think about it some more. And, it's like peeling onions, right? It just gets, better, and, like you go one layer deeper and one layer deeper and so forth, right? So I just wanted to ask you at a 10,000-foot level, think of yourself today versus 20 years ago. And what are some of the mindsets of you today versus, before you read that book? Kind of contrast for me. I know I'm putting you on a spot. I didn't give this to you in advance.
I think back 20 years ago, I was on defense. I was very reactive, and it was not having a vision for my life was very demotivating for me. I joke about it now because I'm the exact opposite person, but I distinctly remember one semester I had dropped a couple classes because I was falling behind, and I literally would set my alarm clock to make sure that I didn't miss lunch. So I was sleeping in, I was up late doing things that were unproductive. And so just having that clarity of knowing that there is a finish line, that I think we have to come to this is a little somber, but I think there's a lot of light that comes from it. I think the understanding that we're all terminally ill and that we have an expiration date that we don't know what it is helps bring to power that we have one chance to play this game and we should play it full out, because the scariest thing to me is being on that deathbed, whenever it may be, and having a bunch of regrets and telling my son, you should have don't do what I did, do it this way. Right. That regretful mindset is something that motivates me every day. And without that one moment or 1 month or one book in my life, I think I would have been on a beeline for that path of regret.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next aha moment, I want to dwell a little bit on this. So you said, I used to play defense. Now I play offense. I think the way I took it is, what you're saying is, in 20 years ago, your life controlled you and you were just reacting to things. But now you control your life, and it starts from what you want. The clarity of, that what's going to make me feel like, yes, I had an amazing life. Yes. Right? And then go back, and I bet when you first asked that question, maybe 15 or whenever after you read that book, I'm sure you didn't have all the answers you have today. So even that answers probably keep evolving and changing and growing, because as you grow, your confidence grows. So now you're gonna say, hey, you know what? Maybe when your son was born, maybe you would have been happy doing that 3 times a year, but now you want to do it every day. Skiing with him. So. What I'm saying is we evolve, right? So we reach higher, because, the first step is always hard. We think small, and then we're like, yeah, you know what? This is easy. I can go to the next level, right?
Precisely.
So for the listeners, what you're saying is, by asking, what you want, what's important to you, and asking it again and again and again, you get clarity. So instead of, it's almost like the phrase, right? Eat to live, not live to eat, right?
Right. Yeah.
Same thing. It's like, life is something you create, not something that, leads you. You take control of your life, as opposed to the life runs you and makes you do things, and you have no idea what you're doing and why you're doing it, and he's going round and round and busy, busy, busy. Is that the insight?
Exactly. It's funny. I woke up this morning and I was watching a little like TED Talk presentation video, and the speaker said, "Do you wake up in the morning feeling like a gazelle, or do you feel like a lion?" And his analogy was exactly that. The gazelle has to run to play defense, essentially, keep himself alive from the lion, whereas the lion goes out and plays offense. So to feed his family, and in dentist terms, to create a practice that they're proud of, and that fuels the lifestyle that they're proud of. And to cite another big thought leader, the founder of Amazon talked about having this cushy job with a big bonus and pursuing Amazon, and he called that his regret minimization strategy. So a lot of times we can stay cozier today, and you might even have to take a step back. But the thing that we talk about a lot on the Real Honest Dentist podcast is designing your epic life. And so making sure that you see those ambitions and that you're willing to step out of your comfort zone, do the things that you fear to reach that next level, like you said.
It's funny. I was just reading. You might want to read it. Amazon, Jeff Bezos' letter to his shareholders. Every year he writes a letter.
Oh,
and
wow.
This year he talks about, I think the question somebody asked is, so he had told people, his team, that, every day is day one, meaning be a beginner every single day. And somebody had asked him, what about day two? And then he goes on to explain what happens in day two, right? You start getting comfortable, and day one for him is like, be that child, like think of the child, right? The child that climbs that stairs for the very first time. Nobody told the child to do it. Nobody said, oh, you might fall and you might break. Just starts one day decides to climb that, stairs, right? And then he puts his one hand, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he didn't read a book on how to climb a stair. He didn't teach them. Nobody taught him. No, he didn't watch a video. And then he falls down, and you know what? He gets back up again, and he tries again, right? And we are like standing behind, worrying. Oh, what if he falls and flips? And we are like worrying and worrying and worrying. But he figures it out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the 12-month-old baby. Then we grow up as adults, and we kind of lose that childlike, that wonder, that curiosity, that, hey, and then we get stuck. Oh yeah, this is how we used to do it yesterday, or oh, this is what the book told you to do it, or this is what my university degree professor told me. It's always somebody else telling you, as opposed to using, like, what happened to that child, right? I mean, it just vanishes.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, you talked about Jeff Bezos. I mean, he's a pretty interesting guy, and he's laughing. I'm sure I've seen his crazy laughs and stuff. But anyways, but it's interesting.
It's funny how, I mean, and I think a lot of this stems from the scientists and dentists, and then furthermore, because we go to dental school where there's really no margin for error. We're always graded against perfection, and so we become very, in those 4 years of training, we become very risk averse, and so it's counterproductive when you become a business owner, a practice owner, to think that way, because the technology is evolving, the insurance game is evolving, the whole climate of dentistry is always evolving, and if we stay put and try and just maintain a plateau, that's the biggest risk to me. And so I think it's important that we kind of embrace, if you go to the gym, you expect to feel a burn, you expect to sweat, and that's how you grow. And I think business is the same way, although we like to deny that fact all the time.
Exactly. And I think you're absolutely right. You hit it right on the nail on the head, which is, I mean, from the time you are in a small child in kindergarten, especially when adults get involved with the child, right? When the child is a child grows like amazingly, right? The minute adults get involved, we send them to school, and they're supposed to sit there for 8 hours, and we tell them how to get an A, and we tell them how to please the teacher, and all of that stuff. And then we train them, we brainwash them like this for 18 years. And then we have standardized tests. Oh, that person got 100, so he gets to go to this university or this school, and it's SAT. And again, I have a teenage daughter, and I know, getting a perfect score on SSAT is not that hard. You just find a tutor, you figure out the system, you hack the system, you get a perfect score. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. You know what I mean? But then we say, well, the kid who got perfect score on SSATs goes to Harvard, and we kind of put these schools and everything else on a pedestal. And Steve Jobs, born to, like you're born to what Lebanese immigrants. I guess his dad was Syrian immigrant. I mean, he didn't have a dad. I mean, it was step parents, right? And he's brought up in all these crazy circumstances, and he drops out of college, and he changes the world, right? As opposed to all these people with all these big name everything and whatever. I mean, so my point is I'm not against people with big name degrees. I'm just saying sometimes what we think is the right answer usually is the wrong answer, and we kind of reinforce that, or then we have done the mistake, and then we don't want to say we made a mistake, so we kind of keep defending it.
Right.
And
funny, I was just talking to a family member this week who was looking to grow her business, and she said she wanted to take this next leap, but she's terrified. And I said, that's a good indicator that you're on the right track.
Right. Exactly. I mean, yeah, so I think this idea of, F is bad and A is good, then failure is, a bad word is crazy. That's exactly why people get stuck in the same old for 50 years, as opposed to the guy who doesn't care about failing. He looks forward to learning from failing. He just keeps growing and growing and growing. And
it's difficult for dentists because, we are always in that precision mindset and trying to perfect our margins and perfect our occlusion and perfect the aesthetics and the shade matching and the translucency. And it's going back to what I mentioned before, that same skill set does not work in business. So you have to embrace the multiple hats that you wear and almost take a contrarian view, knowing what role that you're sitting in, whether you're working in your business or on your business. I find that I have to become a different version of myself, and the precision that I need when I'm a clinical dentist and making sure that I'm giving a painless injection is completely different than when I'm sitting down and trying to forecast the next year and make bold moves so that my practice continues to grow, and really pushing a comfort zone. So it's a difficult game that we have to play as dentists, but I think the more we embrace that we have a leadership hat, a clinician hat, an entrepreneur hat. A lot of us have to be community builders and step outside our comfort zones if we're introverts, which is pretty common. Do the radio spot, go on TV, do the YouTube video. All those things are things that we avoid, but the blessings of taking that leap can be quite profound.
Absolutely. Speaking of dentists, I work with 140 dentists, very directly because we do marketing for them. And yesterday I had the privilege of talking to a dentist, kind of like you, pretty, like an interesting person and, open thinker and stuff. His name is Dr. Trent McCord. I don't know if you know him, but he started a practice.
Trent. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was talking to him, and he started a practice a year ago exactly, and I asked him, what's the one thing, the biggest mistake or biggest lesson you took out of, your last year, starting a practice from ground up. He's a young guy. He graduated in 2013. Yeah. And he goes, well, I wanted things to be perfect. I thought my day one is going to be perfect. You know what? Our computers didn't work. I didn't even, couldn't even use half of it. And I was stressing myself out so much because it was not perfect. I had to realize that, that exact same stress I have in trying to be perfect is what's hurting me the most. So now I don't get stressed because I know it's not perfect today. I'll make it better tomorrow, right? It's not perfect tomorrow. I'll make it better, even better the day after. And he said that's the number one thing he got out of it. I think you're right. It's that on one hand you're taught, it's drilled into you, you cannot make mistakes. It has to be perfect. You're dealing with somebody's, health and all of that stuff. Great, fine. That caring is awesome. But what you're saying and what he told me yesterday was that that's great when you are working on a patient, but when you are trying to grow a business, when you're trying to grow as a human being, when you're trying to, grow as a dad, when you're trying to grow as, everything else, you cannot have that mindset. We all have our kids for the first time once, right? And nobody told us what to do. So if you try to be perfect, we're going to just overthink everything and mess it up.
I think it's interesting in dentistry, we're always trying to avoid problems, but if you think of our industry, we are in the problem business. So just like you said, embracing that and knowing that you're going to have a no-show. Like yesterday, I'm about to go on vacation. I had this onslaught of emergencies and crown deliveries before people went out of the country, and I must have seen 8 patients after 5 p.m. yesterday, and that's not my ideal, but I had to embrace it and know that that's what allows me to go on vacation, and their problems are my ability to solve their problems is the business that I'm in. And so those problems aren't just patient problems, they roll over into staff problems. That's part of being a business owner and the responsibility we have as a leader. And so the denial and arguing with that reality is what drove me crazy for probably 3 or 4 years of my practice. And now I just know that we set our practice day up for the ideal, but we're very rarely going to hit that target. There are going to be some times where we bottleneck and run behind, or something doesn't go as planned, or the crown takes a little bit more than 2 minutes to adjust. And that's just part of the day. We figure out how to be mentally agile and compensate. And that's a lot easier when you're not, like I said, arguing with reality.
Right. And let's pause that for a second, right? Instead of looking at the problem as a problem, if you look at it as an opportunity, one of the lessons I just picked up listening to you is the minute people know you're going on vacation, they want to come up with all their problems because they're afraid, what if it comes when you're on vacation, right?
Yeah,
so maybe the lesson there is, hey, I'll keep my day before my vacation half day empty. So these things that's going to come up, because it always seems to come up right before I go on vacation, I can handle them without, I'm just passing it out, right? So that problem becomes an opportunity and a growth moment for you, as opposed to, hey, I have to get stressed every time I go on vacation.
I totally agree.
Yeah, interesting. So going back to my original question, you today versus you, 20 years ago, one thing we talked about is, you were on defense versus on offense. I love that. And I love that, gazelle versus lion. What's the next thing?
The one thing that I've probably has been the biggest growth spurt for me, and kind of on that same journey of reading books, transformational books. I don't really want to pick up a book unless I can think it can shock my system, shift a paradigm, do something transformational, or at least make me scratch my head and think in a new way. And the one thing that I've kind of made a study in the last couple of years, and I've spoken on it on a couple of occasions at dental meetings, is that we, at least me, I'll speak for myself. I shouldn't say we as a broad scope as dentists, but I know there's a fair amount of people that can relate. We come from kind of a heads down, clinician, introvert, bookworm background, and we think about confidence as kind of the life of the party, the gregarious guy in college that walks into a room and all the eyeballs go on them, that sort of thing. And the more I studied it, the more that I realized that sometimes the people that we think are competent it's a bit of a facade covering up for some kind of deep-seated insecurities. And the people who we think aren't competent are quite confident. They're strong-willed. They have some grit to them. And all that to say that it's a learnable skill. I was probably one of the shyest people in my dental school class, probably one of the shyest people in undergrad classes. I never raised my hand. I just kind of always tried to blend in. And again, that's not productive if you're trying to grow a business. You need to be able to engage your patients. Some of that personality probably should come out in your marketing so they get to know and trust you before they walk in the door. And so making that a study and understanding what creates confidence and what is counterproductive to confidence, and understanding that it's a muscle that you can work and flex and strengthen so that they're, in essence, it becomes a foundation for all your other successes. confidence is essentially knowing that you can create a positive outcome and moving forward and taking action in that. And so that's been a really something that has been super interesting for me to study. It's quite hard to find resources that are really kind of distill that down into a nutshell, but I think it's something that your listeners, my listeners, should experiment with, because it's a multiplier. If you can figure out how to grow confidence clinically, entrepreneurially, socially, whatever it may be over time, it makes everything more robust and better. So that's something that's been really fascinating to me recently.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. I run a company of 200 people, and I run my company with that single word, confidence. Let me tell you how I do it. And it's kind of funny. We have never, ever met, so it's almost like I don't know how we ended up at the same conclusion. I believe in this idea of growing, right? I mean, if you look at simple interest versus compound interest, the reason compound interest works is it grows on top of yesterday's growth, right?
Yes.
So if you do compound, if you grow 26% a year, okay, in 30 years, you're going to grow 1,000 times. Okay? It's crazy. 1,000 times, right? Same person, 1,000 times bigger, 1,000 times more impact. So I got fascinated by this idea of growing 1,000 times, and I was kind of on this journey and trying to figure it out for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And I realized at the heart of it is growth and how fast you grow. Then I was figuring out, how do I find the right metric, right thing that's going to help me see, am I growing or not? Is my team growing or not? And I stumbled on the idea of confidence. So this is how we do it. So everything, every person, every week, every day, even every time slot, we call them time slots, where we work on some activity, we ask a question at the end of it. And the question is, did my confidence grow? Okay. Second is yes or no. If it's yes, okay, great. What can I do to build on it? Okay. We call it further progress. If it's yes, what further progress can I make to build on top of this? If it's no, then the question is, okay, why didn't it not grow? What can I learn from this? I mean, classic thing we did 2 minutes ago is, the day before syndrome, where you get bombarded with everybody and their problems. Hey, why did that happen? Maybe because when people know I'm going to be on vacation, they're going to bring all I've heard the same story from doctors. If they're going on vacation, they are getting killed because the people without sickness, they think they have sickness, and they wanted to kind of come and see you because, they're afraid, what if it happens when you're not there, right? I mean, it's just human nature. So now, instead of letting that be a negative, hey, you free up half a day and you plan for it, because it has been happening every time you go on vacation. So here in that example, the confidence did not grow. You were feeling frustrated. Instead of making that frustration take you over and, really ruin your vacation, you say, okay, what can I learn from this? My confidence did not grow. What's the insight here? Interesting. Now take a next step, even based on that insight, even based on that my confidence did not grow. So we do that every day, everything. And we do that with people. We do that with projects. We do that. And some of the things I've been working on, we have grown like 100 times in 2 years. But it's interesting. And, it's fascinating. And you're right. Confidence, that's life. Because the thing is, if your confidence is growing, I'll give you a real story. My daughter, my eldest, who's 14 now, and when she was tiny, even up to grade, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, she was very shy. She wouldn't even open her mouth, and we kind of made it worse. We kind of kept saying, don't be shy, don't be shy, don't be shy. You should speak, you should speak. If you don't speak, this is going to happen. If you don't, and the more we said that, the more conscious she became of her shyness, and the shyer she got. So usually we all have to hit rock bottom. So we moved to a new school, and I'm like, I have nothing to lose. I'm kind of one of those crazy people. I'm open to trying new ideas. So I pick up the phone, I called the new teacher, and I said, I need your help. She's like, shoot, how can I help? I said, my daughter is like this, and we have been telling her not to be shy, not to be shy. It's not working. What if we try something else? Now, unfortunately, we have lost credibility because we think she is shy. Because you're a new teacher, she doesn't know you, and we know that she has a hell of a lot of respect for her teachers. I mean, she listens to her teachers more than she listens to us. Now I think it's kind of, we are maybe like 60-40, but when she was young. So I said, maybe you could try noticing when she's not shy and say, hey, good job, amazing, like point out the tiny moments when she's not shy. That's one strategy. The second strategy is say, you know what, because she knows that the teacher doesn't know her, right? So set a huge dream for her. So literally, I, I think, to be honest, I shouldn't take credit for the second one, the big dream part. She did it. The teacher did it. So what happened is the teacher listened to me and she understood everything. And she's an amazing teacher. She changed my daughter's life. And she, told her, there's this principal's council, and this is how it works. You all have to make a presentation as to why you should be the one from our class to join the principal's council. There's 10 kids, 5 girls, 5 boys. And she came and cried her heart out, and she didn't want to do it. And I was, my father passed away, so I was going back and forth, so I was even home, but my wife was there. But she didn't want to disappoint the teacher, because the teacher said, you're going to be amazing at it. So at home, she would cry and cry and, all of that stuff. And my wife kind of, kept saying, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And what happened is she goes and gives a talk, and life and luck sometimes works, in your favor. And what happened is there was 4 other girls, and they have been in the same school for 4 years. So I guess half boys, half girls. So the boys didn't want to take sides trying to vote for any of those girls, so they picked her. So I'm sure she also did a decent job. So she ends up being selected to the principal's council. So this girl who believed she's shy and she cannot speak in front of even one person now gave a talk, and she gets elected to the principal's council. And little by little, in that whole year, the teacher starts shifting the way she was looking at herself. You are amazing. You're not shy. She actually didn't even use the word "you're not shy." She kept saying, "You are bold. You are strong. You are an amazing public speaker." So she kept never talking about what she was not good at. She only talked about what she was good at. And today, she makes plays, and she's in leadership positions. She directs them. She creates them. She's doing all kinds of stuff. And I just think back, the transformation from a kid who was kind of going inward, and then it's interesting, right? I think, I don't know, as adults, as parents, as leaders, as our teams look up to us. Sometimes we can try to notice the positives and try to, because the more positive we notice, the stronger they get. And talking about confidence, that first thing was a big deal, just talking to, 5 of her classmates. Now she's directing and making plays and, acting in front of large audiences. And it's a huge jump. Of course, it didn't happen in one step. It's like, 10, I don't know, she was 9 or 10, and now she's 14, 14, so 4 or 5 years later. So, but every step grows her confidence. Every step grows her confidence. And she goes to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. It's interesting.
Those are powerful leadership lessons. I've had a transformation in my dental practice in the last, I would say, 6 months. And it's right in line with what you're talking about. When I sit down with my team, I do quarterly what we call 10-10s. Just a check-in. It's not a review. I help them kind of self-evaluate where they're at and how they're growing and what their next quarter objectives and goals are. But my objective is we have certain things that I've declared are important for the practice, and then certain values that they've declared are important for them in the practice. And the question is, when they self-evaluate, is how evaluate yourself on your confidence to exemplify the tribute of simplicity or creativity or these values that of joy, things that they came up with. And the joy that I get from that, it goes back clear to where we started, is knowing that I have a business to run. That's important, but really in the grand scheme, that's short-term thinking. What can I do for my team, my staff, that if they leave me tomorrow, they'll be a better person for working for me? And if we can teach them, again, that confidence is a learnable skill, and that can incrementally grow or exponentially grow, or whatever path that we so choose, that is something really powerful. And I think if you can create that culture within your practice, turnover goes down, the productivity goes up, the fulfillment goes up, your ripple effect of patients feeling that and writing a review can be quite profound. And that's something that I've really tried to focus on, I would say, in the last 6 months. And if I told you the secret to my growth in the last 6 months, it would come back to that very thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting up on a third point, which I think is scarcity versus abundance, right? And trust me, we all have scarcity. I had a ton of it, and I think I'm letting go more and more of it. And, it's a journey. Like, I used to be worried, even telling what we do publicly because I was worried some competitor would steal my ideas.
Yeah.
But then I realized, it's false worry. I mean, the world is a huge place. There's like 100,000 dentists. I don't need to worry about, this one guy is going to steal my, few hundred clients. So,
Yeah.
and you're right. And an idea that kind of resonated with me maybe several years ago, and I still keep growing in it, is that, when we are born, we don't pick our parents. We don't pick what country we're going to be born in. We don't pick what city we're going to live in. And when we die, the same thing, right? We don't get to take any of what we created with us. So why are we getting so caught up in all this nonsense about, what am I going to lose? What am I going to lose by helping somebody else or by, giving something? Like today, I'm hoping we are giving something to the people who are listening, right?
For sure.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
we don't take any of this with us. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I could, but I can't. So what's the point?
Yeah, I think that should be everyone's driving motivator of what is your legacy. And I think for dentists, that means what are you giving to your community? And community can be a variety of things. It can mean your zip code, your patient base, whatever that may be. But in a global economy, I think if you're doing well, and I think you should, and if you're not, then there's ways to unpack that and make sure you're doing well in dental practice. I think that dentists should feel more worthy of that, quite frankly, because, I mean, I can tell you my story. I went to undergrad for 10 years. Undergrad for 5 years. Went to dental school for 4 years. Went to residency for 1 year. So that's 10 years of education. I served the country to pay back that debt for 4 years, all before I started practice as I wanted to. And so there's a lot that goes into achieving the ability to buy a practice, own a practice, have a team. And for that, I think we should be rewarded. And so that's not an entitlement. I'm not saying that at all. But going back to your abundance, I don't think, a six-figure income is anything that somebody should celebrate. If that's enough for you, then that's fine. But is it really fueling your epic life? Meaning, are you getting the vacations, the travel, the time with your family and friends that you really desire? Making sure that that's part of your day-to-day, and then projecting forward, like you and I have both talked about, and making sure that you're making a lasting impact. And you talked about the ultimate leadership lesson of making sure that a child is prepared for being productive, self-sufficient, really creating value for the world when they become 18 or 19 or wherever it may be. All those things we forget when we're heads down doing a molar root canal, that those are the most important things. And if we look at it the right way, the root canal, the crown, all those things that we've studied so hard can be the engine that drives all that other things. But going back, it's kind of gone full circle. I think the clarity of knowing what we want that impact to be and what we want that legacy to be has to be foundational to all that. If it's going to be a journey that we enjoy and that we feel that has given us a level of achievement that we desire.
Yeah, and to piggyback on your point, you said, that fear, I'm teaching my team, and what if they leave me and take all of that knowledge, right? Or I'm helping them grow my confidence, and what if they take all that and go and help somebody else, right? And letting go of that fear. I have two examples, and these are everyday dentists. Like, one is one of my dear friends and a client. I look up to him. He's a mentor of mine. His name is Dr. Jim Palmer. And, he's the nicest guy on the planet. Like, when I first went into this association, and, he was a treasurer there and stuff, and he really made me feel welcome and, much appreciated. And it's not just with me, with everybody. Like, I have never talked to him when he doesn't talk about how amazing his team is. He praises others, not just in front of them, but when they're not there. And one of the things that kind of stuck with me is, one day one of his team members said, if we start early at 6 or 6:30 a.m., we can finish by 2. And we all have young and growing kids, and, we would love to spend the time with our kids. And he said, he should have said, his only answer is, why didn't you tell me this sooner? Because I could have done the same thing with when my kids were growing up. But anyways, he didn't let that affect it. So for the last so many years, that's what they do. They start at 6 and they finish at 2. And his team loves him because he cares about them just like, like caring is something that you get when you care about others, right? I mean, you cannot buy loyalty. You cannot buy, trust. You cannot buy love. People give you when you give them that, right? So it's amazing. And even his patients, he doesn't talk about them as patients or customers. He uses the word guest. He's in South Carolina, so in a southern, the hospitality. He says, I treat my patients like a guest who I invite to my home. That's it. And when he sets that model, everybody else models that. And he has an amazing life, an amazing practice, and the people around him, love him. I mean, I only met him, briefly here and there, and stuff. But just those tiny interactions, how amazing it is. And the reason I bring it up is because, I mean, there are everyday heroes among us. And I have met so many dentists, like that. I'm just using him as an example, every day. And sometimes these everyday heroes, I think, make the world a better place. And we all can be like that, of course, in our own little way, own little world. We don't have to be Gandhi or, we don't have to be this, huge person. We can, but I think it comes back to your point, that getting rid of that scarcity mindset. Oh, by being too nice and being too complimentary or by doing more good for my team, or what if, that ends up hurting me? I mean, just have to let go of that, mindset.
For sure. I appreciate what you said there. I think, at least when I look at my leadership journey, I grew up on a farm. It was kind of respect your elders, speak when spoken to. I spent a lot of time in high school athletics where the coach's word was deed. I was in athletic medicine at the University of Nebraska when they won national titles in 94 and 95, and the defensive coordinator could grab a linebacker by the face mask and tell him exactly how to redo the drill. And then I was in the military. I was in dental school. So all these institutions can be very condescending. And I think that was kind of ingrained in my leadership style. And it is something that I've had to closely examine and realize that walking into my practice and thinking, hey, listen, you're on my payroll, this is what you have to do today, is very, 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 very counterproductive. And right. That treating, you called the patient's guests, treating your patients like volunteers because they have, especially in what I would consider a less loyal kind of culture that we have in dentistry, whereas you could screw up multiple times and your patient you'd still be my doctor. Now, if they get a statement for $14 because you overestimated their insurance, they may leave, or they may leave you a 3-star or 1-star review. We have to treat our patients as volunteers and our team as volunteers because, in essence, I can make my team show up for the morning huddle. I can keep them there as long as I want, but they get to decide how much energy, effort, how well they treat my patients. I'm busy all day long, and I know little of what happens at the front desk or in the hygiene room when I'm not around. And so developing that sort of thing and treating them like gold and making them feel great and building their confidence is just the right thing to do. But the dividends for you, for your bottom line, for the growth of your practice, it's just there's so many ways to develop. I think revenue isn't always a dollar sign. I think there's equity that we build in our practices. There's equity that we build in our reputation. There's equity that we build with our team. And sometimes we have to take a withdrawal, and to build up that emotional bank account in those people is something that I think often gets overlooked because we're independent as dentists, we're doctors, we wear the white coat, and a lot is expected of us, and it's hard to say I don't know. But understanding the importance of the dependence and interdependence we have on our team and our patients is so, at least for my leadership journey, we talked a lot about breakthroughs on the call today. That has been so important to not think that you're the dictator of your practice, because that'll only go so far. But when you give and you develop this relationship of reciprocation, the upside is endless.
Absolutely, and it's kind of interesting. Two things I want to kind of point out, and probably I want to set up another call if it's okay with you, because I know we can talk like for 10 hours. So the first point I just want to point out to people is, great people have a ton of humility, and just in this call alone, you are admitting your own mistakes. And I don't know, I've never met a great person who doesn't have humility. And the other thing you mentioned is earlier on in your comment, the confidence. People think, that bravado, that big shot thing is really confidence. It's not. And, sometimes, there's a story that Gandhi was Gandhi, but somebody in a train station, because he dresses like, a coolie, right, meaning like a laborer, said, carry my bag, and he did. And he never told the person he's Gandhi. Of course, everybody in India knew who Gandhi was, but, in those days they didn't have television, I guess, so he didn't know how he'd look like, But that humility, right, and again, it goes back to confidence. Some people have false confidence, some people have real confidence, right? And you can see it after a while, who's real confident and who's false confidence. And the second point you made, which I totally agree, is that people think we get paid back only in money, and that's not true. You and I are doing this. Nobody's writing a check for us to do this. But I bet there's going to be at least one guy who's going to listen to this and say, this helped me become a tiny bit better in my life. And he's going to remember us, right? Are we getting a check in our mail? No. But who cares, Like we said, we don't check the check when we die anyway. So, and you can get paid back in relationships. You can get paid back in goodwill. You can get paid back in so many ways. Check is just a small way. It's one of the, relationships, goodwill, all those things, reputation, all those things, right? And I think a lot of people, think the only way to get paid back is check, and they have these blinders on. And sometimes, that's one of the things I loved about my chat with Dr. Trent yesterday. He writes, he gives money and helps out the people in the community. Some person lost a bike. He bought the girl a bike. It doesn't ruin his life to spend $300 to make, this poor, this girl who couldn't afford a bike, who lost her bike, to get her a bike.
She'll never forget that.
Yeah, and again, when he did this, he posted on his Facebook, and he got back in so much more from the community, because he's just being a nice human being. So sometimes, because we're like, oh, that bike is costing me $350, and what if I don't get my return on investment, and overthinking all of that stuff. He just did it, and he just took a picture and posted on his Facebook. And again, it's very hard to measure these kinds of kindnesses and how it's paying back. But you know what? He's been in practice for 1 year. He gets more than 100 patients. So I do think all of this stuff that he's doing, giving to the community and being part of the community, is paying back. Of course, it's not measurable directly, but it works.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we as people have to trust in the humankind and believe that the good that we do for others will come back to us.
And sometimes, at least for me, when I think about when I'm in a dilemma in my practice or in life, quite frankly, I think about how will I sleep tonight. And so when you talk about Dr. McCord, just knowing that he probably went to bed that night with a smile on his face, and how that made him feel. Every time I do some act of charity, whether it be free dentistry or some sort of mission trip, I go to give, but I always leave thinking that I have received more than I ever put in energy into the exercise.
Absolutely. I need to wrap up. We are running short of time. So if somebody wants to, I would love to have you back, Doctor. That's number one, if it's okay with you.
Thank you.
That'll be awesome. So we'll set up another time to, have part 2 of this. And I'm sure we'll have part 7 because I'm sure we can talk about a lot of interesting things.
It was an easy conversation. Yes, I'd love that.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. And and the next question is, if I'm a dentist and I need to talk to you or learn more about some of your ideas, what is there any place they can go and listen or get in touch with you?
Yeah, a lot of the core concepts that we talked about today.
Right. Do you have a website or a phone number, doctor, where people could go and get more information?
Sorry, I lost my mic. Yeah, a lot of the core concepts that we talked about today is the reason I started my podcast a few years ago, The Relentless Dentist. So you can go to relentlessdentist.com. There's like 150 episodes that we recorded on there. There's tons of great guests and conversation, mostly about the mindset of success. One of the pet peeves that I had when I started recording those was the exact thing that you talked about, that there wasn't enough humility. I wasn't feeling like when I listened to a Paramount speaker in dentistry that they were talking about the uncollectible balances or the no-shows or the veneers that came unbonded. And that's what my day-to-day looked like to some degree, and knowing that we're all having those struggles and also the successes is also important. So relentlessdentist.com is kind of where most the content that I've created lives, but I'm also happy to get a lot of emails. So reaching out to me, david@vailvalleydentist.com is the easiest way to contact me. And a lot of times I'll schedule calls and give away advice. I don't have anything for sale, but again, like you and I talked about, it allows me to go to bed with a smile on my face that I've learned from so many great authors and speakers and podcasts, mentors, people that have given of their time. And so if I can help somebody out and let them learn from my lessons at the School of Hard Knocks, I'm happy to do that.
That'd be awesome. Yes, so relentlessdentist.com. I think you have more than 100 episodes. That's an amazing resource. And your email again is david at
Vail, V-A-I-L, valleydentist.com.
Perfect. David at VAIL, valleydentist.com. Perfect.
Right.
I would love to have you back. And once again, everyone, thank you for listening to another amazing episode of growingdentist.com. I would say this is one of my best episodes, and I just can talk for 10 hours. So thank you, Dr. David Maloley, for taking the time and really doing this for us.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Doctor.